Energy Master, your desire is what I'm after. Energy Master, your desire is what I'm after.
Your desire is what I'm after. Your desire is what I'm after.
So Dr. Landau, the first thing I tell my students here at the university is to read the Lucifer Rebellion in the Urantia book. Because then they would have a general idea of why our planet's so badly confused and a terrible place to live. Can you explain what you'd like to share about the Lucifer Rebellion?
Yes, sir. I think the Lucifer Rebellion is, to me, a very sobering realization of what can happen to, in this case, a very high spirit called Lenanandek, and he was loyal for hundreds of thousands of years before something went wrong in his heart or thinking, and he then rebelled against his father, who was the creator son of Nebadon, and actually against the Universal Father himself. And so, to me, just the realization that one could be so loyal for so long and then go so far off and throw so many persons off a whole, not just our world, but 36 other worlds fell. And he was a very trusted system sovereign at that time. And I think the other thing that I get from that rebellion is that when you're so trusted and looked up to, you can do much more harm to others who believe in you than someone who is not as high in a state as him. But the rebellion took place 200,000 years ago, and this was after hundreds of thousands of years of loyal following of God's will. And the system of Satania has been off ever since this rebellion. But I'll tell you, I think that it's coming to the point where God is going to come back and save the world, and he's going to do it very soon. And I'd like to be able to help him along with everyone else when that happens.
And at the time of Lucifer's fall, he was in charge of 617 worlds. Is that correct?
Yes.
Wow. So if he can fall, how, like a very thin tightrope walking on it, us human beings can fall, and we don't even know it, do we?
No, we don't.
Can you share what some of the things that Lucifer taught in that rebellion?
Well, he actually had a manifesto that he put out. And I'm not sure I can get all those 7 points that he put out, but he had help from his, I'm going to call him his lieutenant, his first assistant system ruler with him was Satan. And he had Satan kind of help him disseminate his manifesto, if you would. But the manifesto, the biggest part was right off the bat, where he denied actually the existence of God. he said, there is no God. He said, you're all gods. You know. And then,
And that's what they say today in the New Age.
yeah, that everybody's a god, you know, and so forth. And then he attacked absolutes. He said, there's no absolute truth. Everything is relative, you know, which is another way that takes away our responsibility.
That's also what they say today in the New Age teaching.
So, yeah. And he said there's no evil. So that automatically.
That's also what. So there's nothing new in the New Age, is it?
No.
Yeah.
So he went all the way down to the bottom. He finally said, well, you're not really a citizen of the universe. And, you know, you have no responsibility for the universe or anything else. So basically, just do what you want. And that was his preaching of the unbridled liberty message.
So self-assertion and unbridled liberty. And, you know, we hear so much today about, oh, just follow your heart.
Right.
But a lot of times, there's two compartments in the heart. You know, the lower self and the higher self. And a lot of times people want to follow the lower self of their hearts.
Yeah.
And can't distinguish between God and themselves.
Yes.
And that's the danger. Yeah. Well, will the Lucifer rebellion ever end?
Absolutely. It's coming to an end. I think one of the most important things to remember is that the Paradise Father, he doesn't have to subsidize evil ever, but he actually puts up with it, I think, for us to learn our lessons. But when there's been enough suffering going on, he chooses to say when enough is enough. And I'm pretty sure that he said enough is enough, and that's why the signs are in the heavens, that he's ready for this rebellion to come to an end, putting the call out for the rest of us to help him.
Well, thank God for that.
Yes.
But there sure are a lot of signs. This definitely is the time of Matthew 24. There's enough signs in the heavens now to convince any skeptic that we are at the end of an age. Let me ask you, do you feel that Nibiru, the planet 7X, Planet X, Wormwood, has something to do with the end of the rebellion?
Yes, I really do. I think that God the Father, he's created this whole hierarchy of living beings they're all very loyal to him, and they have listened and followed his directions. And so when I look out into the heavens now and I see so many things changing and shifting, my heart goes out and realizes that he's first and foremost put the sign out that his whole legion of, I'm going to say angels and super angels or whatever, are here to assist him now to bring this rebellion to an end. And I think personally that many of the things that were said in the Bible, and they refer to different levels like angels, I think they were actually referring to a whole hierarchy of God's help. And I think he's getting it out there, and he's wanting to us here to help him as well.
In my teaching, The Adjudicator is Coming, I mentioned that Lucifer was released from his prison, and presently he was put on Nibiru. As fantastic as that sounds, what do you think about that as a scientist?
That's an interesting thing, because we've read about and I know about persons that are sent out to prison islands and whatever else so that they won't injure others. And so when I think of a world that Lucifer might be placed onto, it still is one thing that in my heart comes out, that he wouldn't have another second of existence if God the Father and the Creator Son didn't give it to him anyway. So you would think that
That's how big and bad he is.
yeah. So whether or not he gets he gets on this world and he wants others to join him and everything, there's one problem. That is that they can't do anything without God anyway. You know, even the rebellion itself was a sign that God was giving them the room, the leeway to be able to learn from their lessons. So that there would be a world that Lucifer would be onto, and that he might join up with others and see if he can take on God himself. Wow. To me, there's only one problem with that, is that you can't exist without God. So why would you try to take him on?
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, everything does seem to be leading up to a final conclusion, that's for sure. The prophecies of the Hopi. You know, when I think it was 1997, I went to Hopi land, and I was blessed to meet the oldest living Hopi elder at the time, Titus. And he had a lot to say about the end of the present world and the beginning of the fifth world. And quite interestingly, the Urantia book being also called the fifth epical revelation, which we study, as you full well know, you're a teacher of it, along with the Bible, because the Bible is a book of prophecy. The Urantia book is a cosmology of the grand universe, as you know, and we do need both to understand reality. The doubts that people have about Nibiru coming, about, because when I first heard about Nibiru, reading Zachariah Sitchin's writing 20 years ago, whatever, I thought, this can't be true, you know. And one of the reasons why I thought it wasn't true is because I absolutely rejected the Anunnaki creating the human race.
Right.
So we're going to be talking about the Anunnaki a little later. But, well, 2/3 of mankind may be destroyed. What do you think about that huge number? And why would 2/3 of humanity be destroyed?
Well, I think part of what we're talking about is, you mentioned it, the extent of confusion of the planet and how off it is in its values and so forth. And all of this, you might say, is the end product of taking that rebellion to the nth degree, in which I think we all have to share responsibility for the ways in which we've allowed this to go. But if God is to be able to save this world, and God is a savior as well as a creator, and he loves each and every one of us in an incredible way. It's beyond even my imagination. But we cannot have the rejection of God's presence and the rejection of his laws and maintain our defiance of God. The very planet itself, people want to talk about the wrath of God, but what about the salvation of God? What about the fact that God knows that our planet is disintegrating from its own radioactivity, and we deny that? And God knows that this planet is losing its orbital position and can plunge any time into the sun. We won't even take responsibility for that. So God cannot save us unless we actually allow him to do that. And we have to give up all of this disease that we've embraced. And so part of the cleansing process is actually our salvation. For us to come pure and clean and be as children of God again. And be humbled at least enough to ask him back. Be humble enough to tell him that we can't survive without him and that we don't want to survive without him. I think this is a bigger part of the message than those that are worried about how much would be destroyed. Because in fact, if we all embraced God and did our part to put him back into our hearts, this would be a much, much different adjudication than it looks like. But God himself cannot allow the destruction of this world by those who would stay on it rejecting him. So if anyone wants to reject him any further and not take him back, they can't be on the planet. Whether it's done by a lot of people dying or they have to be transported elsewhere, doesn't really matter. They cannot stay on this planet and it be purified and have God return. You can't have it both ways.
Now at the end, the truth needs to ever win.
The truth needs to ever win. The truth needs to ever win.
Energy Master, your desire is what